If you guys have questions for me, Kiyan Sobhani, drop them in the chat right now on YouTube. And get creative. Have some fun. You know what's boring? Can Vinicius and Mbappe coexist? Is Rodrygo leaving? Call me out. Bring some heat to the podcast. Argue with me, debate with me. We're starting in a moment. This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by Doubletree Suites by Hilton Hotel Charlotte South Park, the only place we even considered staying in Charlotte when we went to see Real Madrid versus Pachuca on June 22nd. And this is the hotel you should be staying at when you book your trip to Charlotte. Overlooking Symphony Park, the hotel is within a 2-minute walk. 2-minute mile would be insane. A 2-minute walk to South Park Mall, Charlotte's premier shopping and dining destination. They have an outdoor pool with a waterfall, a fitness center, and a restaurant and a lounge. And every stay starts with a warm chocolate chip cookie. Let's get to it.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First great podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
What's up, you big, beautiful Madridistas? Welcome to a Q&A with your boy, Kiyan Sobhani. Why can I not figure out how to change the graphic on the screen? There we go. Here I am. Listen, welcome, guys. Welcome, Madridistas. Welcome, everyone else. Arsenal fans still lingering around from all the Arsenal fans we gained from that game in the Champions League. Welcome to all the Kool-Aids who are big fans of our podcast and will continue to be around so long as they're having a good era, and then we'll disappear forever after that. Welcome to everybody. We are going to do a little Q&A live on YouTube. Again, this is kind of a low point in the season in terms of news. Most of the shit that we are listening to is just, why is Mbappe getting the 10? Stuff like that. So, Thibaut Courtois at Tomorrowland. That was big news. That was huge news yesterday. There was literally nothing else to talk about. So here we are. Get creative with the questions. As I said at the top, there's only so much I can say about things we talk about all the time, like can Vinicius and Mbappe coexist? I love history questions. I love things that you might disagree with me on. I love being called out. I never get called out. I don't like it. I don't like constantly being around yes men. So feel free to challenge me on certain beliefs I have. I would much appreciate it, to be quite honest with you. We're going to get started here. We're going to get cracking. All right. So, Shay is reminding me, tell the people to like and subscribe right now. That's right. All of you guys who are here live with me, all you have to do, and listen, even if you're not live, you're just watching the video, you just take your index finger, hit the like button, and that's it. That's the extent of the effort you have to exert. It does not take you long. It takes a millisecond to press like and hit subscribe. Thank you so much. All right, let's get started. What's up, Tony? Shravan says, hey, Kiyan, my question was, what do you think we will do with the backline? Let's assume the team is as it is right now. No more signings. Do you think Tchouaméni will be the center back? I feel Güler needs more time. If we get no more signings, and this is the squad, so that means even Rodrygo stays, and it's finalized. We put a bow on it. No more signings. I mentioned this to Lucas the other day on the podcast we did. I think we got all the urgent signings out of the way. I think there are more signings to make. But if you told me this is it, I wouldn't be completely devastated. I'd be like, we did the essentials, okay? We have improved since last year. We have definitely improved since last year on paper anyway. So I'd be okay with it. I still think we could squeeze in a couple more profiles that we need, but I understand why it's difficult because you need to move contracts and you need to sell a player. And I know it's not that easy. So if it was closed today, The backline is pretty clear to me. Trent, Howson, Rudiger, probably Carreras, and then Chouameni is doing the third center back thing. That's it. The bigger question is what happens when Chouameni doesn't sit? And that actually, to me, is one of the most intriguing questions. I have many questions of Xabi Alonso still. This is why in the Club World Cup, I asked Xabi Alonso who can do what Chouameni does in the squad, and I really wanted a name, and he didn't give me a name. So I really want to know what happens when Chouameni doesn't play. But assuming everyone's healthy, and this is our backline, and this is the squad, that's the backline I'd go with. Güler, I think he is ready. Does that mean he's going to be perfect right away and he's not going to make mistakes, or maybe he needs some time, like we need to be patient with him? I think fundamentally he has the skill set and has enough experience under his tool belt when you factor in the Euros, when you factor in how long he's been playing in Europe and starting to get more reps now at the club level. I think he is ready for what Xabi Alonso needs of him, which is to drop and help with ball progression and bring some control to the midfield and bring some vision and creativity and unlock defenses and help with set pieces. I think he is ready for that role. So does Güler need more time? I think he's ready personally. Fartsy says Alaba. It says Alba screwing us big time. I'm gonna just assume you mean Alaba, not Jordi Alba, but David Alaba. He's not screwing us, guys. Come on, let's be honest with what's happening here. You cannot expect a player who's under contract and has agreed with the club, and the club has agreed with the player, that he's just going to be like, all right, guys, you know what? I'm out. Don't even worry about my contract. I don't need the money. Like, there's nothing you can really do in this situation. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. This is not, you can't just press some buttons and then, ship Alaba off. Alaba is well within his rights to just see out his contract. So you just have to hope that Alaba, when he's back in full fitness, he can get back to a really solid level that Xabi Alonso can use in the rotation. Same for Militao, by the way. Shravan says, considering Rodrygo is leaving, do you think this is a mistake? Because I could totally see him own the Wirtz role, and we don't know how good Vinicius can be centrally, just in my opinion. Are there any other Rodrygo questions? I might just kind of lump them in now because I have a feeling Rodrygo is going to come up more than once. Let me just do a quick scan. Okay, I don't see any. So maybe this will be the Rodrygo segment of the podcast, I think, and then we'll just get it over with. And if there are any further Rodrygo questions later in the episode, I'll just refer you guys to the beginning of the podcast because I don't know what else to say on it. First, we'll give the update on what the situation is, and then we'll talk about whether we should work harder to keep him. The reality is that Rodrygo wants to play as a fixed starter. Xabi Alonso cannot give that to him, in part because he already has to make Vinicius and Mbappe click together, and it doesn't sit well with the balance of the team that he has in mind. It's not that he wouldn't use Rodrygo, but the role that he could offer to Rodrygo will not be the same role that he can offer to Vinicius and Mbappe. And therefore, Rodrygo himself will have to accept the same role that we saw in the Club World Cup, basically, which was minimal. And if that happens, as I told Lucas a few days ago, he is severely overqualified for that role. You can't find me a player in Europe who's going to play like a handful of minutes as good as Rodrygo. Like, he is, no matter what we have criticisms of we've had of him in the past few years, he is just supremely overqualified for that role. And the second most important thing is that he has a ton of value. And if you want peak monetary return for him, it would have to be this summer, because if he stays with Real Madrid another season and barely plays, his value is going to plummet. So if you're going to quote unquote cash in, it has to be now. It has to be now. So that's the most important thing. And also because this is also the summer you're trying to make room, if you can, for a Konate or a Stiller. And you can't really do that unless you move some contracts. So that's the reality of the situation. Whether it would be a mistake from a sporting and tactical perspective, of course, because in that sense, every single team in the world would love to have Rodrygo in their team, if not as their super duper star winger, but as an important role player. But again, this is the challenge we run into. Your points that you're making here, Shravan, are valid because Rodrygo is good centrally. He works hard defensively. Is he Florian Wirtz? I mean, I might push back on that, but can he play the Wirtz role? We've seen him in situations like a 10 or a false 9, and he's done really well in those situations. So I wouldn't dispute it. So from a sporting perspective, tactical perspective, I think it would be crazy for any of us to disagree with the statement that it would be good to have Rodrygo in the squad. But again, this is the situation we're into now is that you can't just have all the best players and put them in the depth chart and just expect and pretend that everybody's going to be happy. And that's just not going to work. And so that's why I refer back to what I originally said. The important thing is to look at the reality of the situation. Okay. FG says, other than roster spots, what's stopping us from going all in on Stiller and Saliba this summer? Roster spots and money. Those are the two things, FG. Those are the two things. I was told by club sources that once we factored in the transfer fees for Massantuono and Carreras, and then we have, obviously Trent was free apart from signing bonus and his salary, which is obviously very high. But between Carreras and Massantuono and Hausen, there wasn't much money left over unless you sell some players. Now, if you were in a situation where you didn't have to get rid of a squad, I think the money would have opened up. I don't think that would have been an issue. So it's not a situation where like, oh, we're broke. But again, the main thing is the question of like other than roster spots, you can't really ask it that way because that is the main thing, right? So once you open up a roster spot and you move a big contract and you bring some transfer money in, then you can justifiably go for those players. Until that happens, I don't think we're going for players like Stiller or Saliba. Saliba, I mean, let's just get this out of the way. I think Saliba is probably out of the question. I think he's going to renew with Arsenal. Also, why would Arsenal sell him to us? I don't. Saliba always seemed like kind of like a stretch to me. Oscar says, "What's up, Kiyan? What's something that you miss about the early 2000s football, and how would you compare early to mid 2000s to modern football?" What do I miss about 2000s football? I mean, to be quite honest with you, it's just nostalgia. I mean, really, it would be the same things that like someone growing up now would miss 20 years from now would be this nostalgic feeling of seeing Vinny and Jude and Camavinga and Modric and these guys play. For me, it's just the feeling of being a kid and sitting and watching football with my dad and watching Zidane and Figo and Raul and and seeing Real Madrid beat Valencia 3-0 in the final and seeing Real Madrid beat Juve 1-0 in the final, like Mihatevic's celebration. It's all just nostalgia to me. Seeing silky players like Redondo boss the midfield. I mean, that's what I miss, really. I don't know, like, I can't really sit here and say it's obviously changed. Like, I can't sit here and say that it's, better or worse because it really depends on what you value and how you enjoy watching the game. I do feel at times football is a little bit robotic. I do feel there's more football now than ever, which kind of devalues, I think, a lot of the football we watch because, when you increase the quantity, the quality gets diluted as well. All these teams have so much depth now. There's also so many injuries. You never know who's going to be able to play when you turn on the TV or you roll up to the stadium. I don't know. What do I miss? It's really just nostalgic emotions more than anything. I can't say it was better or worse. It was just different and it was nostalgic. But there is another question that is tied into this. Okay, I'll bring it in when I get to it. Oscar says, who would you say will replace Jude in the first few months? In my opinion, will alter the system slightly to accommodate a different skill set as we don't have the same profile. Camavinga to start. I would keep an eye on Mastantuono. It won't be right away because Mastantuono will basically arrive with the team right before the season starts because it coincides with his 18th birthday and you can't legally bring him over before that. So it won't be right away, but I would keep an eye on Masantuono maybe like a month in or possibly sooner if he gets integrated off the bench quicker than that. I'd also keep an eye on a combination of Brahim, Güler, and Camavinga. I know that Güler is going to play a bit of a deeper role, but with Jude out, maybe Güler takes a more advanced role until he comes back. And obviously, Brahim. And hey, just because we mentioned it, who knows? Maybe Rodrygo as well. But obviously, the thing with replacing Jude is that you got to replace everything, right? Like he's such an incredible presser, and his ability to track and tackle and escape pressure and all that stuff is just so vital. So I don't. The short answer will be I don't think anyone will really replace him to the output that he replaces. He puts on the field because he's Jude Bellingham. He's one of the best midfielders in the world, and I think he's the best player in the world in his position. So you don't really replace him, but I think you fill it in, you piece it together with Masantuono, Güler, Brahim, and Camavinga. Again, none of those players can do exactly what Jude does. Like Camavinga can move between the lines the way Jude does, but he can't create from that position the same way. He can fill in and do the defensive work, but again, he can't do the creative element of it and so forth. If you go down every single player I just mentioned, they won't bring everything that Jude brings to the table. So you kind of got to piece it together, in my opinion. Hani says, how long do you think Xabi will be patient on Mbappe and Vinny not pressing as the front two? Is it a month, 2 months before he decided to bench one? These problems don't show enough versus small teams. I would say the moment you would see it in a game, I think he would make adjustments at halftime. I think Xabi Alonso is that kind of coach. Now, does it mean he would bench one of them permanently? I would know, but I think he would adjust quickly if he sees something is not working. Look, again, this is a coach, and so many people have pushed back on this that like, oh, Xabi Alonso will have to adapt and play a different brand of football. Like no, that's not how it works. No matter what brand of football you play, if your front two are walking around, you're screwed. So you have to make big decisions. I push back strongly on that. Okay, here. Sheikh Hatiri says, Kiyan, I've got a criticism. We criticize Carlo for never trusting the academy kids. But when we talk about what profile of players we still need, y'all never mention La Fabrica. Shay, are you kidding me? Come on. If I mention the words Gonzalo Garcia, Jesus Fortea one more time, my head's gonna pop off. I don't know what else I can say. I mean, I think the point about mentioning La Fabrica is that like every year the talent pool you're gonna have is gonna be different, right? So depending on like what really good players you have in the team year to year, you're gonna mention different names at different times. And I think Gonzalo Garcia and Jesus Fortea, these guys are probably two of the most promising ones we've had in a long time. And I think with the other ones, I tried to mention La Fabrica. I don't know if this is true. This is my criticism of your criticism of me would be that I don't think that this is actually true. I've said many times that like because Xabi Alonso seems to be trusting of the youth more, it's not as disastrous if we don't go into the center back market or as disastrous if we don't go to a certain market, because it seems like Xabi Alonso doesn't care about age or seniority and he'll actually use the young players we have. So this is my criticism of your criticism is that your criticism is not true. All right. Oscar says, what's something people aged below 25 don't know or realize about certain players in the past or Real Madrid eras, which you wish they knew more about? Great question. So basically, if you're a new fan and I had to like give you certain things to go back and revisit, I'll give you a list right now. And I actually would strongly urge you guys to take a pen and a paper or a notepad, your Apple notebook, whatever, and just write these down, because I actually get questions like this sometimes. Like I remember we used to get questions like this a few years ago because a lot of Real Madrid fans became Real Madrid fans because of Cristiano Ronaldo, which means they joined in 2009, which is awesome, right? But they had questions like, how do we learn about the great players in history? Like, what if we had to prioritize and go back? What should we go back and watch? So it really depends. I mean, like let me just go back just one for each era to make it simple, okay? I would say the people under 25 should really know how great Raul was and how important that era of Raul was in shaping the club's image. Um, I would go back and watch certain games. I think I would go back and watch the Real Madrid's 3-1 win over Manchester City in 2003 in the Champions League. I would go back and watch Real Madrid's all of Real Madrid's Champions League finals because I think that'll give you a good picture. Um, I think the 2003 one I bring up is that because I think that was kind of when the Galactico football kind of peaked in terms of beauty and in terms of how everything was just clicking. That was before Makelele got sold, obviously. And you could kind of see like how the great thing about that game and also that era in particular, up until the point Makelele gets sold, is that you could see how great Makelele was. And I think Makelele is actually one of those players who's become underrated over time because he truly was one of the best defensive midfielders ever. And if you see, like I remember we used to get into these Casemiro and Makelele debates, you know, and I would always say like, you guys who didn't watch Makelele play don't understand. Like Makelele wasn't just a destroyer. His short range passing, his dribbling, and his press resistancy was half of the reason that Real Madrid also had a two-way balance in that era. And quite frankly, any defensive balance literally came from him individually by himself. And so I think, going back and just seeing how great Makelele was, how great Raul was before his decline, um, I think going, just one era before that, like one of the most underrated players in Real Madrid history is probably Michael Laudrup. And he was only here for a couple years. But in those couple years, he completely shifted the power from Barcelona to Real Madrid when he switched over. The fact that he helped Barcelona beat Real Madrid 5-0, and then the next year switched over to Real Madrid and helped Real Madrid beat Barca 5-0. You want to go back and watch Ivan Zamorano's hat trick in the 5-0 in 1995, I think it was. You want to go back and watch the Quinta del Buitre days and see the greatness of Manolo Sanchez, Martin Vasquez, who is a completely unknown player at this point for newer fans. Michel, the David Beckham of his time, traditional right winger, unbelievable pinpoint crosses from the right wing, dribbling, shooting. You want to go back and watch the fact that Butragueño is literally just Raul and Benzema, but for his time, they all had the classic ability to link up, to dribble, to make, to play just behind the striker, to play up other people, the ability to just freeze the game into slow motion. And then, of course, if you go back before that, then you're just, you're starting to get into black and white footage kind of, but you want to watch the comebacks of the 70s against Derby County, against Inter Milan, Santillana. And obviously, I didn't mention Hugo Sanchez, who was basically putting up Cristiano Ronaldo numbers in the 80s, which was insane, like 40 goals, 50 goals. Like the numbers were incomprehensible for that time. And of course, you want to go back and read this book, Di Stefano by Ian Hawkeye. And we have no excuse now. We can actually go back and watch footage from Futbolia.net and watch the old games of Di Stefano, Gento, and Puskás and Santa Maria and all these guys, and Hector Real and Raymond Copa. These guys all fucking played together. It was like the 2016, 2017 of its time. You look back and like, how are these guys all on the same team together? They just destroyed everybody. So do it. That's my little history rant for you guys. Derek Murad says, hi, Kiyan. How do you deal with transfer rumor noise? How can you gauge if a rumor is true or not? Yeah, I have a rule on this. Basically, there are just like a handful of people I trust. And by handful, I literally mean less than 5. With Real Madrid anyway. Like, I'm not qualified enough to talk about the Premier League journalists and all these guys, but I would say stick to Arancha, stick to Mario and Guille, stick to Lucas Navarrete, who has been bang on basically for this reporting for years and is underrated when it comes to reliability. Managing Madrid will never, ever break something that's not true. I know it's a very small percentage of time that we actually do it, but there's a reason because we don't make shit up. There are guys who know shit, but they also make up shit in addition to that. So just keep it a tight ship, and I would be very, very cautious. Also, looking at the timing of a certain report. Is there news? Is it boring? Is it slow? Then there's more chances of things being made up during that time. That this is basically the time we're in now. All right. Kamavinga supremacy. I like that comment. Aditya says, your opinion on Asensio. I think he is whack. And even during Purple Patch, he was doing way too many slide tackles to be a good defender. I think we've seen two extreme opinions on this. I think on one hand, people really thought that he was the second coming of Sergio Ramos. On the other hand, when he went out of form, people thought he was just a useless footballer. And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think even in the Club World Cup, amid his chaotic and erratic and weird, nonsensical decisions in defending, he also had some great challenges and great coverage for Trent. So is he going to be your solution at center back? No. Is he going to be a good squad player? Probably. But I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Shay says, what's your favorite all-time non-Real Madrid 11? I don't know how is it possible for me to do this on the spot, but I'm going to give it a go after a sip of coffee. All right, here goes. Buffon, Zanetti, Nesta, Maldini. I'll put Maldini at left back. So I need another center back. Beckenbauer. Yeah, and by the way, I have watched a lot of Beckenbauer, so don't come at me with like he was before your time. Go watch Beckenbauer on YouTube. The guy was elegant as hell. DM. I'll put Edgar Davids. Totti. Paul Scholes. And then up top, I'll go Ronaldinho. And who am I going to put up top with Ronaldinho? I'll go Thierry Henry. I was going to say there's a bunch of players on my mind, but then I realized they did play for Real Madrid for like 1 year, so it's cheating. The fact that no one's jumping out at me might mean that I just really don't like anyone outside of Real Madrid, to be honest with you. I'll go with Dennis Bergkamp. Okay, so Alberto Batar says, how is Gonzalo possibly leaving Real Madrid still being discussed? Also, the options of clubs for Rodrygo don't look great. I think the chances of him staying go up by the day. What do you think? On the first point, Gonzalo Garcia leaving Real Madrid is not being discussed. So that's that. Rodrygo, yeah, I think the challenge with Rodrygo will be that it's going to be hard to find a home for him. The sweet spot of a club who can afford him, who will give him the playing time, plus Rodrygo wants to go there. Like, this is why, like, Tottenham made no sense when that rumor surfaced, right? Because why would Rodrygo go to Tottenham? Now, Arsenal, we're talking. Do they need to sell Martinelli to make room? Do they need to? I don't know. Like, honestly, these are just questions I have. I think Rodrygo is a better player than Martinelli. I think he would start over Martinelli. But, like, I think when you look at the Arsenal situation, like, they can probably afford him. But do they need to also make some room financially or in the roster as well? These are questions I would have. And of course, if it's Saudi, they can obviously afford him. But would Rodrygo want to go there? Probably not. Anthony says, what's up, Kiyan? What are your top 3 hipster matches of the last decade? Hipster? They won't be hipster. I'll just tell you 3 of my favorite games in the last decade. So we're going back to 2015. The last game at the Calderon, obviously the Benzema dribble, the Isco goal, one of Modric's best games ever. I'll go with that. Um, the Clasico where Cruz, I think it was 2000. I want to say it was 2022. The one where Cruz was literally levitating. And it may have been Cruz's best performance ever. Like I've just never seen him just dominate. And I mean, that's saying a lot because Cruz was um just unbelievable for so many years. But I don't exactly know. Um, you know, October 2022, that Clasico. That was one of my favorite Cruz games. So that's number two. And then number three would be here's a hipster one. I don't know if it's actually hipster, but it's not on the magnitude of the other games. The 5-1 um against Celtic, where Rodrygo played as a false nine, and it was just awesome to see him connect the dots, and we destroyed them. So there you go. Three hipster, non-hipster games for you, Anthony. Varun says, "What do you think about the Ceballos situation? I don't think people realize how lucky we are to have Ceballos as one of our backup midfielders. I'll be glad if he stays." Completely agree. I don't know how else to say it. Dani Ceballos as like your fifth choice midfielder. I don't understand how anyone could possibly complain about this at all. It doesn't make any sense to me that anyone would be outraged, because I know people were outraged because Lucas was telling me that people were outraged when he reported it that Ceballos was potentially staying. How can you possibly be upset that Dani Ceballos, as a fifth choice center midfielder, is in the team somewhere to help you fill in and rotate and help with ball progression in certain situations? This outrage makes no sense to me at all. He's affordable. He's very good in his role. He's not expected to be Tony Cruz, but he's there as like a fifth midfielder. I'm 100% okay with it. One second. Derek says, "Hi, Kiyan, has Courtois surpassed Casillas as Madrid's greatest goalkeeper?" I say yes. It's debatable to me. I still think Casillas is the best, but there are certain, I think, positions and debates that I personally believe are not definitive either way. And if it's really close between two certain players, I think whether you feel strongly about one or the other, you have to be open that the other player, it would be reasonable for them to be ranked ahead. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I believe Roberto Carlos was better than Marcelo, but I think it's close enough that if you had Marcelo over Roberto Carlos, I wouldn't really debate you to the death. I would bring my arguments to why I think Roberto Carlos is better, but I wouldn't hold it against you if you felt that way, because I think that's a reasonable argument. I think the same thing with Casillas and Courtois. Casillas was unbelievable. Courtois is unbelievable. They both have an incredible resume. Casillas obviously was at Real Madrid longer, and I think he had a solid decade there where he was great before he declined. They both have incredible performances in Champions League finals. They both had to single-handedly keep Real Madrid afloat with disastrous defensive tactics in front of them. So I think there's a case for both. Sammy says, "Are we the only team in football history to have a debate about dropping one of our two best players, Mbappe and Vinny?" No, this is actually common in all of sports, really, this discussion. It's not uncommon to us because you think about certain, I mean, there's so many examples. Look at literally PSG with Mbappe, Messi, Neymar. Look at, Zidane and Figo. Everyone was like, these guys can't play together. Why is this? That I remember being a fan at the time and what the discussions in the papers were. You look at there were debates about Hazard and Vinicius when Vinicius broke through and Hazard was signed. They're both left wingers. Can they both coexist? You had discussions like this. Raul Ronaldo Nazario, like they can play together, but like, did you need Ronaldo Nazario? You know, these questions always arose. You think back to basketball examples, Harden and Kyrie and KD. Um, you think back to, you know, some of these weird Lakers teams that were put together in the end of Kobe's tenure with old Karl Malone and Gary Payton. Like, these conversations have always been prevalent in sports. Like, if your two best players or X amount of best players occupy similar zones in the field, these conversations are naturally going to arise. So I don't think we're the only case. No, no, far from it, actually. Okay. Love this one. James says like and comment from a cool air. See, guys, if a cool A is liking it, then you guys have no excuse. Okay. Oops. Sorry, it jumped. Okay, here. Oscar says, funny how you and Lucas spoke about the club not getting many players out on loan the other day and day after the club announced loans going out. Well, it's we were just talking, reflecting on, like, if you guys are OG listeners, you know that Matt and I used to have something called the Loan Tracker podcast, which is we would watch every single Real Madrid player out on loan and report back in podcast form once a week. And it was literally a full-time job just doing that because we had everybody on loan. Like, we had like a dozen players out on loan every year between Kovacic and Achraf and Odegaard, Ceballos and Teo Hernandez, Mayoral. The list goes on. Like, it didn't end. But now, like, I think Real Madrid have smartly moved to this situation where instead of loaning out players, they sell them but keep rights to them, which makes way more sense if you think about it anyway, because you get a small transfer fee up front. It's not going to be significant, but you do. And then the player, the team that buys that player has way more incentive to play and develop those players. Like, I remember there were situations, like so many situations where we didn't understand, like, why. For example, at Valladolid, this is random, but Javi Sanchez and Valladolid never played. I was like, what's the point of this loan? Andre Lunin, same thing at Leganes, never played. What was the point of this? Once you start selling these players with rights, that team now has more incentive to develop the player. So I like the new model we're moving into. Oscar says, what was your standpoint on the Super League? I think the Super League, the idea of it, the idea of a Super League makes sense to me because I don't love the Champions League formats. I love the idea of taking the monopoly out of UEFA. I love the idea of creating something more exciting that you get some of the best teams in the world going against it, more regularly. Because this is not my own personal biased opinion. All the games I remember, all the games I look forward to every season are the big games. Like, when we get to the big games against the big teams in the Champions League knockouts, or even the Champions League group stages, or the derbies, or the Clásicos, that's when I really, really get excited. So, it's funny because Anthony was asking me earlier, like, what are your three hipster games? None of those were like, I don't remember. I can't even tell you what happened, like, against Celta Vigo, last season. With all due respect, maybe they even beat us, knowing how bad we were last season. But it's the really, really big moments that I love to watch. I get excited for. But so to have more of that would be really cool to me. But I don't like the way it was presented. I didn't like the idea that you are forever locked into this league. I know the new format now has revamped and improved the idea. It's, you can get relegated and stuff, and there's tiers, and that's cool. That was better. But ultimately, I also just don't see it happen. Like, I just don't see how it happens. It's so impossible to make this work. Um. All right. I love the questions, Oscar. Because I'm going through like 12 Oscar questions in a row. I'm going to take a break from your questions and come back. Okay. Sultan says, where do you see Brahim's role in the squad? How can you maximize his potential? I think Brahim's role in the squad is exactly what it was last season under Carlo, which is energy off the bench, creativity, dribbling, line breaking, help you with some offense, energy off the bench. That's what he's going to be this year as well. A lot of people asking me about updates on the book. I have 2 chapters left, plus editing, plus artwork, that stuff. So I don't have a timeline on it, but yeah. Zav says, Kiyan, why do people keep repeating this lie that Vinicius doesn't press? If the person who's supposed to lead the press is just walking, it gets discouraging and you just stop doing it. Yeah, I don't like, to me, Vinicius, like categorizing Vinicius in the doesn't press category, it make sense to me, but it is a weird phenomenon to me because Vinicius by nature is a very hardworking player. He does press, but then when he's in the lineup with Mbappe, he doesn't press, and then the problem compounds because you now have 2 players not pressing, and that's a huge problem. So you can draw your own theories on conclusions on why that happens, but that is something real that does happen. That Vinicius is a player that does press, and he does work hard on defense, and he actually tracks and he hunts players down on defense. But for whatever reason, and you can compile the compilation like of clips, when they're together, he looks at Mbappe, he's like, well, if he's not doing it, I'm not doing it. And now you have 2 players not doing it. And it's a weird problem for Xabi Alonso to have to solve. So it's funny because when you start going through the comments, you realize kind of like where you are, like the timeline, because now people are like suggesting the strikers for my all-time favorite non-Real Madrid player 11, and people are like Van Basten and then talking about Makelele's press resistancy, and I'm like, oh, okay. So that's kind of it almost feels like a lag, like when I'm talking and then seeing how you guys are responding to me in real time. But I don't know, something that just I'm juggling, I guess. And Tarek says, hi, Kiyan, love your Q&As. Love you, man. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you. Lazarus says, as long as Mbappe is around, we will never be a team. Vinicius and Bellingham proved that they play for the team when we became champions. Mbappe has never done this in his career and never will. So let me ask you this, Lazarus. If and when Mbappe wins trophies with Real Madrid, what will you say? Because when you talk like this about a player who scored 45, 44 goals for Real Madrid and was great in big games, many big games, and then all of a sudden when he starts winning and Xabi Alonso gets this team to click and it's cohesive, you guys, everyone who slanders Mbappe for not being a team player or having an ego, you guys will have to just change your narrative. So I'm very curious to know what you'll say at that point. Arif says, what do you think of Iridium Aurora? Shout out to Iridium. Love that guy. Nobody knows Castilla like him and Sam Sharp do. And you guys should all make sure you follow Iridium's work. Florentino Perez says the problem is not Florentino, shout out Florentino. Fanboy right here. Check out my shirt. Florentino says the problem is not Mbappe. The problem is our defense conceding 4 goals against big clubs every time they play. This is my, like, I'm not huge on like labeling one thing as the problem. Like, I feel like we sometimes fall into this trap of like, this is the problem or that's the problem. I think there are just a lot of things that are going on and all of these need to get solved. Like if there's a tree rotting, right? You can't like start looking at the branches and pointing problems at the branches. Like, oh, this is the problem. That's the problem. Like there's a lot of problems feeding into the tree dying. So yes, is it a problem that Asensio and Rudiger just lost their minds and just did stupid shit against PSG, and we have problems with players making boneheaded plays? Yes. Is it a problem when your coverage is not great on a high line? Yes. Is it a problem when your attackers are not pressing, when you're trying to press and hold the high line? Yes. Is it a problem when you don't have good wingbacks for a long time? Yes. Is it a problem when you have a board who didn't strengthen certain areas of the squad? Yes. Is it a problem that you also had a coach who didn't trust the young players when he didn't have new signings? Yes. There are just so many things you can go on and on and on and on. But I just like to pinpoint it on one specific thing is very difficult for me to do because, yeah, the defense conceding 4 goals against big clubs is a problem. But if you look at that PSG game, outside of those 2 mistakes, please look at every defensive play that happened. PSG one pass past the attacking players. Now all of a sudden the midfielders, they're facing 4 or 5 players they have to mark because now the opposing team has numerical superiority. They've sliced past your first line of defense. And now every single player in midfield and defense is by default marking several players at once. And so to punish those guys in those situations and call them out for that is also unfair. So you guys have to be, I think you have to look at the whole picture. Yeah, there you go. Lakers fans are literally discussing if Luka and AR can play together. Super chat from Jacel, who says, "What is the starting 11 you hope to see most of this season, and why that combination?" I'd love to hear your thoughts about how the main 11 should be set up. Courtois. So this is my ideal, okay? My ideal, because this benches Gonzalo Garcia, who I think has merited a place in the team, and he's going to be a very bright player, and he's actually going to become a quote unquote problem because you're going to have to think real hard about benching him because of what he brings to the table as a different profile and an intelligent link up player and a target and a player who can do so much more. But this is excluding him because this is my ideal situation, which means that Xabi Alonso has unlocked Vinicius and Mbappe's chemistry and their buy-in attitude. It goes Courtois, it goes Trent, it goes Rudiger, it goes Dean, it goes Carreras, it goes Tchouameni, it goes Fede Valverde, it goes Jude Bellingham, it goes Arda Güler, and it goes Vinicius and Mbappe. So if we can get that defensive structure down with that team and you can get your counter pressing on point, you're going to create so many chances. You got the ball progression, you got the quickness in transition, you got the finishing ability, you got the ability to create from deep, you got the ability to press, you got your wing backs high up the field. That's my ideal. And if it doesn't, I think you got to put GG in there for one of Vinny or Mbappe. Okay, and now we're getting to a point in the chat where people are arguing about Kane versus Mbappe. So that's where we are right now. So let me just scroll past the Kane and Mbappe arguments. Sanjeet says, "Who should get the number 9, Fran Garcia or Endrick?" Sorry, Gonzalo Garcia or Endrick? The answer to this question is GG, 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 GG. Gonzalo Garcia is a special, special player. That's all I can say. Give him the 9. Give him the 9. Give GG the 9. I'm down. First of all, let me just point out that I'm going to take more questions now, but I did want to give a shout out to Moji Mates, because if you head on over to moji-mates.com, you guys, you heard me discussing earlier about, players that you need to go back and watch. And I mentioned Di Stefano, and believe it or not, if you go to moji-mates.com, there's a section when you go to Real Madrid or you can just search it. That might be even easier. You can just search it up here, and you can search Di Stefano and get Di Stefano on a shirt. But look at this. Like every time I go on their website, they have new things added. And talk about like little tote bags, I guess they're called, or little backpacks. Casemiro, Cruz, Modric, different combinations, 16, 17. And you go down and see all the options. Look at this. You got Cristiano Ronaldo and Di Stefano on a bag. That's incredible. Guys, go to moji-mates.com, moji-mates.com, and make sure you pick up some Moji Mates swag. All right, next question. Okay, Viva Chorao says, "Hey Kiyan, thank you for what you do. Just wondering about the press. The BBC weren't maniacs at pressing, still worked. I think passing lanes coverage is more workable with Mbappe and Vinny." Myth, myth. Gareth Bale was one of the best at his peak. He was the perfect winger, two-way winger. You go back and watch peak Gareth Bale. That worked with him on the field because he is working his ass off on defense. He is running it behind Carvajal and putting last-second tackles to stop breakaways. That guy was incredible on defense. Karim Benzema the same, and Cristiano Ronaldo underrated at his peak. He was running his ass off too. So look, you need it. No matter how you spin it, you need your players to buy in. Sanjeet says, would a lack of preseason affect our start to the season? I don't think so. I mean, to be quite honest, this is probably a controversial take. I don't know. But if I had to choose between doing a Club World Cup early in the summer and then having time off and then starting to train together behind closed doors without games, rather than not having a Club World Cup and having a traditional preseason where you're just playing friendlies in the US where nothing is at stake and you're kind of just not really that urgent with your coaching decisions or your your play. I actually prefer that we had the Club World Cup because I think Xabi Alonso had this really weird period where he had to figure out on the fly what works and try to win every game. And I think that was really valuable for him. And now he gets to do work behind the scenes and get to the drawing board and get into training sessions and just focus on training. Whereas I think if before the season starts, now you're going all over the US or the Asia, some clubs, Barca's in Asia. And you're not you're just kind of like putting players out, but not necessarily trying to win. I think it was actually valuable what we did. So I don't know. I guess time will prove whether I'm right about this or not, whether my hunch is correct. But I like for Real Madrid, I like the fact that we had a Club World Cup because we had a coach who got to test some things out in real meaningful games. Harmanjot says Mikel Arteta took 5 years to take Arsenal in second triple Premier League finish. This squad is good. The project is better. How many years will Xabi takes to win trophies and develop better project? I can tell you right now. Not only will Xabi Alonso not get 5 years, he will probably not even get 1 year. So this is just different standards, bro. Shayon Saha says, Super Chat, I will give Vinny 1 more year, but if he doesn't perform, I will sell him. Vinicius will never match Mbappe's goal-scoring output. Also, Vinicius should drop Rock Nation as his agent. Look, man. There's a couple things here. Vinicius not matching Mbappe's goal-scoring output, if he's at his peak, is not really a problem for me because we've seen it work. You don't necessarily need one guy to score 50 goals. So long as the team maximizes its output and wins together, it doesn't matter as much. But Vinicius needs to get back to his Ballon d'Or level. And if he does get back to his Ballon d'Or level, he is arguably the best player in the world. Now, your point stands in that if he doesn't perform well for another year, then you have to have that conversation. I think even I would, you can have that conversation now. Quite frankly, you can argue about it. I don't know how much his new agent has anything to do with anything. Now, in terms of like negotiating tactics and leaking things and demanding certain things in the contract, sure, I get that, but I I think that with Vinicius specifically, if Xabi Alonso can get him back to his best level, this is a player you don't want to lose. You don't want to lose him. But I agree with you in that you would have to evaluate if he goes into one more year where he doesn't perform, then you also have to figure that out. Hold on. Anthony says, like you, I've been a fan of this club for the majority of my life. I've never seen such a divided fan base. Fans who seem to love specific players more so than the club. What is the reason? I've never seen anything like it either, Anthony. I truly haven't. I think the dialogue with Real Madrid right now is pretty bad, and I think it. Let me just give me a second to formulate to kind of like formulate my thoughts in a sec. Just give me a sec, and I need a sip. For me personally, I'm a Real Madrid fan first and foremost. And I don't judge people who are not because everybody has their own path. Like I'm not going to sit here and say you should love the club more than you love a specific player or more than you love a specific coach. That's on you. I can't change anyone's habits, and quite frankly, that's my subjective view anyway. Doesn't mean I'm right for supporting a club more than I support a player. Having said that, I think what really irks me more than seeing people support players more than they support the club, because I don't really inherently see anything wrong with that specifically. Where I see something wrong with it is that you cannot talk to these people or reason with them. For us specifically, those people who are part of the quote unquote Vinicius cult or part of the quote unquote Mbappe cult, they will tune into our podcast just to hear what they need to hear to confirm their own agenda or their preconceived biases. You can go 90% praising one of their favorite players. If there's a 10% of valid criticism, that's all they hear. They didn't hear the 90% part. So now they come back and they start getting angry about it, and then they spread it to their cult. And with people like this, there's no shaking them out of it. It's not possible because it's the halo effect. Look up the halo effect. They put a halo around their favorite player or their favorite figure, and anything that is a valid criticism or any criticism at all is not acceptable. It is not possible. They are infallible. It's not possible for them to be bad at something or to have made a mistake somewhere. And so when it comes to this stuff, there's two things to remember. One is that, believe it or not, the majority of these people are 13 years old. And in that case, I don't blame them because I was like that with Raul when I was 13. Where it becomes a problem is that these anonymous profiles that are mostly cowards who just talk shit online, if they are not 13 and they're still behaving like this, then it's just worrying. It's a worrying situation. So you have to factor Anthony and anyone else who tries to grapple with this and just annoyed with the toxicity of cultist fans who just come to argue and just put a halo around their player. You have to remember that A, they're dumb, or B, they're kids. If they're kids, it's fine. And if they're dumb, well, you don't really want to talk to them anyway. So you just kind of ignore all of it and just do what you want to do. But that's my assessment. Listen, I've been doing this podcast since 2015. When it wasn't Mbappe versus Vinicius, it was Isco versus James. That was a huge one. You guys have been around long enough. You know what I'm talking about. Benzema was a very polarizing guy before he hit his peak, which was after Cristiano Ronaldo left. Like Bale versus Isco was another big one. It goes on and on. There's always, and if not in Vinicius and Mbappe, it's going to be something else in 5, 10 years. It'll never end. It'll always be like this. But the difference now is that with social media, we're more aware of how crazy people are, whereas before we were oblivious to it and we lived in peace. That's the biggest difference. Daniel Rodriguez says, "Hey Kiyan, I'd love to get suggestions on platforms to watch games from previous seasons." Daniel, go to footballia.net. FOTBAL. Sorry, I had to make sure I get it right. FOOTBALLIA. Just Google that and you'll see it. It's an absolute treasure chest of a website. Checkmate says he keeps timing me out. I don't know if you're referring to me. I am not doing anything, but YouTube will sometimes check you out if you're just talking shit, or other people are probably reporting you. I'm not doing anything, bro. So checkmate, check yourself. I'm not checking you. Cheyenne Super Chat says also, we are Real Madrid FC, not Vinicius FC or Mbappe FC or Rodrygo FC or Area FC. The sooner we get rid of these players, FC fans, the better. I don't have any issue with players, but the fans are just, you know what they are. A lot of comments talking about Cristiano Ronaldo playing defense, Gareth Bale playing defense. This goes back to the BBC discussion. Adamola says, Kiyan, I think Xabi Alonso was the signing we needed this summer. The players are just a byproduct of a change in philosophy. I think this is a key point. I think an underrated signing is just how different a coach can get a similar group of players to function together. And I think we have to factor that in as, like, if you don't get more new signings, you also have to take into consideration how would Xabi Alonso take a similar group of players, plus Trent, plus Housen, plus Carreras, Masantuono, and get this team to just click differently. You know, how will a new coach utilize Fran Garcia or Arda Güler or Gonzalo Garcia? You know, these are all big questions. These are also, like, to me, Gonzalo Garcia is a new signing. I know it's kind of cliche. To me, also, Arda Güler is a new signing. I know, even though he's not, but the way he's being used will feel like a new signing. Check this out. FG says, I'm over this Vinny hate. Dev says, Vinny hate is so forced and annoying to see at this point. There you go. Case in point. At not a single second in this podcast that I hate Vinicius. Yet here we go. They came and heard what they wanted to hear in their brains, which are filled with selective focus. And that's what they took out of it. So you can't, there's no shaking people out of it. This is an also interesting one. Dev says they played just one game together under the new manager, and for some reason, Plastics have already given their verdict that they can't play together. So on this point, I think that obviously, like you specified, under new manager, it's only one game, which is 100% true. It is also a sample size of one season under a different manager where it just didn't work. And so, but I think the key point is that, you know, one game under a new manager, and that's why I'm hopeful that, or at least sympathetic and understanding and going to be patient with Xabi Alonso trying to make them work together. And after which case, if he can't, then I don't know if anyone can. And in which case, Xabi Alonso will have to make big decisions. Shay says Modric was infallible, Kiyan. Yeah, I think him and like Di Stefano are probably about as infallible as it gets. Benzema versus Higuain was another one. Brian says it'll be Arda versus Masantuono now. It'll be like Arda versus anybody is another good one. Like, remember Arda versus Ceballos? That was a big one last season or 2 seasons ago. Yeah, it'll never end, guys. It'll never end. Okay, so Checkmate is still talking about why do you keep silencing my criticisms, dude? I am not. I don't see any of your chats apart from you complaining about being timed out, and I'm not timing you out. I'm not doing anything, bro. So again, just probably like word your stuff more respectfully, maybe, and then other people won't report you. That's my guess. Is what's happening is that. Uh, Summit says, "Hey Keon, first of all, lots of love. A big fan of the amazing work you're doing, and I think signing another center back is a must because we can't rely on anyone in a big game except Housen." Yeah, I think this is true, but I think this is all. It's what is also true is that we have so many center backs on paper that you need to move someone before you bring someone in. That's the situation we're in. And I think who was it? Shay earlier was saying that we don't mention La Fabrica players enough, and one player that I can't stop talking about is Jean Martinez. You know, he's back. Obviously, you want to be very patient and cautious with him in terms of throwing him into the fire, coming back from an ACL injury. He's probably like 17 by now, so he's very very young. But I was gonna say raw, but honestly, he's not even that raw in terms of like if you watch the composure he plays with, he doesn't look like a 17-year-old, 16-year-old last season. So that's another one I would keep an eye out if we don't sign another center back. Um, FG says I didn't mean you. I should have added context. I meant the online hate. I like this. Yeah. Fair enough. Sorry. And in that case, then you're right. Um, Anthony says, "Will you be in Madrid for the derby in late March? My wife and I will be in town." Late March, bro. I don't even know where I'll be tomorrow. March is insane. That's crazy planning. I don't know. Probably is my guess. Probably. I'd love to see you. Maybe, hey man, and maybe March is around the time we'll organize a Madrid meetup for all the Managing Madrid podcast listeners. Derek says, Keon, when is the best time to visit Madrid to see the Galacticos and also enjoy the capital? Plan it around a big game. Because I'm assuming if you're in Madrid, you want to also get your money's worth and see a big game. So maybe wait till the Champions League schedule comes out. I mean, ideally, if money is not an object or if you're relatively well off financially, I would, if you can only choose one time a year, I would aim for like March, April, because it's not as hot as like the summer, but it's warm. You're already out of the winter months, and you get to see Champions League knockouts. So I would, if you could only choose one time, I would do it around March, April. But given that you have no idea what the Champions League schedule will be by then, it'll be tough to plan ahead until you know the schedule. But if you could, and money was not an object, aim for March, April, May, that area. But if you don't want to wait for the Champions League schedule, like October is a great time to go. There's a Clasico. Is that Clasico in the Bernabeu? Or is that at the Camp? Or not, Montjuic, Camp Nou, whatever is going to be ready. October Clasico is in the Bernabeu. Yeah, October 26th. There you go. That's a great time to plan if you don't want to wait for the Champions League schedule. Dev says, what do you think of Housen taking on a libero role like Tchouaméni does in case of Tchouaméni's absence? He seems to have that ability to carry the ball and distribute it. Yeah, this is the guy I think is most suited to take the Tchouaméni role if Tchouaméni's not playing, quite frankly, because he's got the temperament for it, the composure, the organizational ability, and the passing range, obviously, and the ball progression. What he doesn't have is, Tchouaméni, and we saw in the Club World Cup, if Xabi Alonso wants to switch formations on the fly, you can just push Tchouaméni into midfield. And he did that, I think it was against Juventus in the second half. And I don't think Housen can do that. And if he can, we haven't seen it yet, so it's really hard to make that assumption. So again, this is a situation where I'm really interested to know, like, does Xabi Alonso just go back to a 4-3-3 if Tchouaméni can't play? I'm curious, or a 4-4-2. I really don't know what that looks like, but I'm curious. I have the same question as well. Nana says, what did Jude say to you? I'm gonna answer this one last time and just put a bow on it and probably never answer it again because I've answered it. Well, to be fair, I don't think I've ever answered on a free podcast before, so maybe I'll do it here. Okay, I answered it on Reddit. I did a Reddit AMA the other day, and I answered it on Patreon on one of our episodes. I was sitting by the exit, and after I asked him my question, he walked out and he looked at me and went like this, and he said, "Big fan." And that was it. And I just looked at him like an idiot. I stared, just without expression, dumbfounded by the whole thing, like an idiot. Like I'm just like no acknowledgement, no thank you, no smile. I was just like, and that was it. So yeah, Jude Bellingham propaganda paid off. Dev says kind of off topic, but what are your top 3 away kits at our club? I would say number 1, the 1999-2000 black, the Tekka, the gold, which obviously also was recently re-released as a kit you can buy. So you guys know what I'm talking about for sure. So that was number 1 for me for nostalgic reasons. Number 2 would be the purple of 2016 and 2017. And number 3 would be the following season, 17-18, the turquoise, the one where Ronaldo does the bicycle kick in Turin. Those are my 3 favorite. Uh, okay, cool. Guys, we're 1 hour 11 minutes in. If you guys have any more like rapid fire questions, I can maybe take them. But other than that, I think my voice is starting to give out here. You guys drop in a couple more comments and I'll take them. In the meantime, I did want to give a shout out to tacsports.ca. If you're in Toronto and you're not signed up for TAFC Academy, then I don't know what you're doing, because they got the best sports camps, the best training, whether it's footy, basketball, swimming, in the entire city. And you want to go to tacsports.ca, enroll your kids specifically. If you have kids, you want to make sure your kids are all signed up at tacsports.ca. Toronto, we'll be back, by the way. TAFC Academy, they hosted a kick around for us and a podcast in their academy, and it was honestly one of the most fun things I've done. It was just really fun picking up, playing pickup footy with you guys. So I'm excited to do that again next season. But yeah, go to tacsports.ca, sign up your kids. All right. Gibran says this will be the last, 1 or 2 we take. Gibran says laughed a lot at your AMA. Are you annoyed to the same point with Alaba and Mendy with not renegotiating, but also having random mysterious injuries as we did with Hazard? Also, Gibran back in DC. Love it. Good to hear from you, Gibran. I'm not annoyed with Alaba. I'm not annoyed with Alaba at all. I just want to make that clear. I'm also not annoyed with Mendy per se. I'm more annoyed with the club for renewing Mendy when we didn't need to. And now we're in this spot. And like that, as much as I love Carlo Ancelotti, that was kind of Carlo Ancelotti's parting gift to us. Was he was in love with Mendy. He wanted Mendy to stay because Mendy was so solid, reliable for him defensively. And now we're stuck. We're stuck with Ferland Mendy. And it's a contract we need to move, and we can't. One last one, super chat from Christian Ramirez, who says, expectations for Barca this season, will they be as big of a threat to us as last year? I think out of respect, you have to assume that because Hansi Flick has done an incredible job. Their nucleus is very young. Lamine Yamal is obviously a great player. Pedri is a great player. Rafinha put out some unbelievable numbers again last season. Where I think I think it's also fair to say there could be a sophomore slump. Now that everyone has seen 1 year of football, they know how to prepare for it a little bit better. They'll also be facing a better Real Madrid, I think, much better Real Madrid. So I don't think that Barca will decline, but I do think that Real Madrid will be better, and I think teams will be better prepared for Barca than they were last year, that first year of football. So I think those are all fair statements to make. Listen, guys, you guys are awesome, and I know I like to, I sometimes like to kind of just go at certain cultists and different sections of the fan base, but ultimately, I really enjoy doing this. 99.9% of you guys are absolutely wonderful, and it's a joy for me to do these Q&As. You guys are awesome, and we're working on a tactical video, like kind of like a preview of Xabi Alonso in his first season at Real Madrid, and that won't be a live one, but that will be kind of more of like a video we're going to put some thought into and put it together, and we're really excited about releasing that before the season starts. And yeah, we'll be back. And our next episode, we might throw in one or two more, but our next guaranteed episode is on Friday. That'll be the mailbag over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. If you're on YouTube, you can simply hit join underneath this video and join on the YouTube memberships tab. You don't have to sign up for both. That gets you access to so much, including the weekly mailbag that will go up on Friday. You guys can ask questions and so forth, and we love taking your questions as well. So thanks, guys. Peace out. Oh, also, Florentino Tranquilo, these shirts are on sale for 2 more days. It's the 29th. The 31st is the last day to buy these shirts that Finn designed. From after that, they'll disappear forever and they'll never be sold again. So I put the link in the chat and in the comments and in the show notes if you want the Florentino Tranquilo shirt that Finn designed. See you guys soon. Kiyan Sobhani signing off. Hala Madrid.